Welcome back, everyone, to the Intangibles with your hosts, Kenny and Matt. How's it going, Matt?
It's going as good as those air horns sounded, which is to say, it's going all right.
I would say super good based on those air horns.
Oh, good.
Very good.
I'm glad they sounded good on your side.
Today we've got some good stuff for you. We've got a play of the game, as always, where we will say who or what in this world had the play of the game for this episode. And we will give a solid decision that cannot be overruled or overstated, for that matter. We then will have the meta for this week, where we will be talking about Overwatch. Shocker. And we will have a breakdown of Sekiro, specifically the gameplay. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
Well, let's get into it. Play of the game.
Poke chat, poke chat, poke chat, poke chat.
So play of the game. I'll throw it to you. Yeah. What is your play of the game nomination for this week?
All right. So I got to get you to this game before I even talk about the play of the game.
Oh boy.
Veronica and I played It Takes Two. We finished it up probably a week ago now, and it was an awesome co-op game. That's definitely going to be an episode of ours where we talk about it. The game itself was amazing, and that led us to look at the developer for that game, and they had released a game prior to this called A Way Out, which was another co-op game that they developed where you play one of two co-op characters, and you're both essentially breaking out of prison and then trying to get vengeance for something that happened in your backstory. A Way Out was much, I don't want to say worse, I feel like that's a bad way to put it, but it wasn't nearly as refined or enjoyable as It Takes Two. They definitely built on the basics and
it was like it was much more rudimentary, would you say?
I would say that, and I honestly, the biggest difference between the two, It Takes Two, every single section introduces new mechanics and new styles of play, which was just an incredible experience by itself. And A Way Out was more story-focused, less so developing different mechanics and things. But regardless of that, there's a point in this game. I'm playing this guy named Vincent, and Veronica's playing this other guy, Leo. You know, we're both criminals. We've broken out of prison at this point. We go see Leo's girl, Linda, and his son, his name escapes me, Alex, maybe something like that. But for this week, I'm giving the play of the game to Vincent, because there's this ridiculous scene where you get out and we go back to Linda and Alex's place, and we play some basketball with Alex. Both Vincent and Leo do. And it becomes Vincent's job to basically distract Leo's son while Leo goes to like talk with his girl Linda and, you know, make things right. He literally gets a weapon, like he gets a gun from her. There's just some stuff he has to do. So I'm giving it to Vincent because he tells this kid who literally doesn't shoot the ball once, who's just terrible at basketball on every level. He tells this kid, "You're an absolute pro. You've got the skills to make it, man." Just boosts his ego up and basically saves the relationship of Leo and his son in the most ridiculous manner. So I'm giving the play of the game to Vincent for playing basketball with Leo's kid.
To a fictional character.
Yes, that's correct. You know, I played Vincent, so I could have given it to myself, but I didn't want to go that route. I want to give it to Vincent in the story for what he does. You don't really
That's big of you.
Yeah, you don't really have an option here anyway. It's not like you can say, like, go fuck yourself to Alex. Like, you basically just have to run around in a basketball court until Leo's done with his portion of things.
I get you. I mean, there's something like keeping with the spirit of the show that you like. It's the Intangibles. You gave the nomination to a character, like a person who doesn't actually exist. Yeah, you're throwing up the hand. You're like, that's exactly right.
Yeah, the most intangible, the least tangible thing I can come up with. Honestly, it becomes a harder and harder task every week, I feel like.
Yeah, it's true. This will come out. I think this might be edited out later, but I think this will eventually be episode 2 of the podcast. And I am not ashamed to say we have recorded other episodes at this point. So when Matt says it gets harder and harder, and you, the listener, are like, wow, after one episode, it's getting harder and harder. Jesus. We've recorded quite a few, just so the listeners understand where you're coming from.
Right.
So my play of the game, I am going to nominate Geekspective's own Amber Rocket Orca. Amber. Who I had recently play Sekiro for the first time. So her history, we'll have her on as a guest at some point, I'm positive. And I would like to talk to her about difficulty in games and Souls games in particular, because she is not a fan of Souls games in general. She's got a history with them, which I'll let her explain. But I had her play a little bit of Bloodborne at one point, and I had her play recently a bit of Sekiro from the beginning. She did well, I would say. She is gifted. She can make it happen in Souls games, in FromSoft games. I sent you some footage of the gameplay. What was your impressions?
I enjoyed it thoroughly. After getting through all the screaming and shouting while she was in fights, I think back to the first time I played the game and coming up on like the first mini boss. No idea how to approach that, especially if you have any previous FromSoft like Dark Souls experience. You're going to approach it entirely wrong anyway, And I have no idea how many tries it took her to get through. Like the bits that I saw were her basically beating these mini bosses. Which again, in our first playthrough, I remember beating our heads against the wall for a while just trying to get through these guys. So I was impressed.
Yeah, I was too. I mean, basically she had the same experience we did of you get through this first mini level of the game. She played it a bunch of times, and at a certain point she's like, I am just so exasperated. She's like, I want to quit. I was like, you don't have to keep going. And she's like, no, I'm gonna beat this fucker, this leader guy. And she kept going through it, and it was amazing to watch the progress of, like, at first you're just running forward, you don't know what you're doing, and then how quickly she got into stealth kills on the first few guys where you don't even have to interact with them. And then she's like, these guys with the hats are big assholes, so I'm going to approach them a little bit more carefully. And then she's like preserving her gourd, which we'll talk about later. She's like preserving her health, and she gets into the final fight, and she just kept at it. She so wanted to beat it. And so I'm nominating Amber just for the pure tenacity, which I think is, honestly, it's the number one trait of a good Souls player, is that you put in the time, you improve, and you get good, which is the ultimate, Souls meme, but is the truth.
That's the slogan, right?
She got good.
Did you try getting good?
She did. She got good at the game. Like, she got good at this route. She figured out how to do it with preserve her health, and she figured out how to attack these enemies. It was impressive to me.
Yeah, you're definitely right you're going to hate every single FromSoft game if you don't have some amount of perseverance, because
if you're not patient, you will hate these games.
Yeah, you're going to try it, 5 times, 10 times. It's going to feel like you suck at it and you can't figure anything out, and you're going to give up.
Yep. But she stuck with it, and that is not in her nature. So it's in her nature to be tenacious. It's not in her nature to keep playing something that's not fun. Yeah,
definitely.
But she did it, and she told me later that after she played that, she went to bed and she dreamt of Sekiro that night. I'm like,
I really wonder if there's something about how the game, how the rhythmic portion of the game, because I've definitely dreamt of Sekiro a ton. Yeah, we'll get there. I see your hands up in the air.
Let us reserve our thoughts for later.
Well, we got to give the play of the game to somebody, and I will vote wholeheartedly for Amber in this case. I will vote wholeheartedly that Amber deserves it over Vincent's dumbass playing basketball with Alex.
Well, I think that's only appropriate for the topic of this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, the meta.
2 to the 1, from the 1 to the 3. What's up? This is Jeff from the Overwatch team, making changes that you wouldn't believe gonna take you out with a long-range beam.
Today we are talking about, surprise, Overwatch. It is the game that you and I have probably played the most together. That's not even probably. Definitely we have.
Definitely, yep. I mean, we've put a lot of hours into Bloodborne together too, but kind of it probably still pales in comparison.
it can't compare with a competitive game that you just dump hours into and keep getting. Like, at this point, we are both... this is weird. We're both silver borders, which is to say we're like level 600.
600 plus, yep.
And how many games does it take to gain a level?
Well, so once you get into it, once you've gotten past the first low XP levels, I think it's 20,000 XP per level at that point. And if you play, if you watch that first win of the day and all that crap, you get like 1,700, 2,000 SR, or not SR, XP max per match. So you're talking like minimum 10 games per level, basically, and that could be 15 to 20 minute games. Yeah, it's a lot.
At the end of the day, it's a disgusting amount of gameplay, and it's disgusting how much we've played it, and we pale in comparison compared to people who have actually played the game from its inception.
Yeah, who actually dump hours and hours into competitive too,
Yeah. Nevertheless, we do take it semi-seriously, and we spend a lot of time thinking about it. Time of recording, this is May 11th, 2021. So we're going to talk about the current patch, the current meta, and where do you want to start? I want to talk about like our low elo area, the current patch, and also the Melee Grand Finals, the tournament that has gone on. Where do you want to start there?
Oh man, I think we can start at low ELO and just talk about like what our perception
we're at.
Yeah, what our perception of the meta is. And I don't know, do you want to discuss? I honestly, I don't even know if it's worth digging into like the most recent hero changes. It might even just be more worth talking about what we're seeing in games as far as compositions and that sort of thing.
I want to do a little bit of both. So let's talk about both of them at the same time. So
okay.
Why don't you lead off with your impressions of what is it like at our admittedly low ELO?
I feel that like currently in Overwatch, there is not, especially at our ELO, and this is often true, but I think especially now, there's not really a meta when it comes down to it. I feel like the game is in a good spot and people play whatever their comfort picks are for the most part. I mean, you still see the typical combos that you've seen of like rush and dive and stuff like that, but it's by no means you don't have to do that to win at all. And I think that there's just, we'll get to it in the Melee too. I feel like there's just a lot of variation right now in what people can play and succeed with, which I think is good for the game. I like that you're not tied down to playing one or two specific compositions to feel like you can succeed.
Yeah, I think in the time that we've been playing it, it's probably the game is at the healthiest point that it's been at, and it's been hanging out in that area for a long time now, I would say. What do you think? Okay, so we say it's at a good spot. Are there any particular champs or comps that you think are common or typical? I have one in particular that I feel like I've been seeing a lot of.
In our own play,
is there a champ or comp that stands out to you?
From a tank perspective, no, I don't really think so. From a damage perspective, I feel like Echo is very strong and very frequently played. And then from a support side, I feel like Baptiste is still very strong. They actually nerfed him recently, but I feel like he is still one of the strongest supports who gets played very frequently. But again, I don't necessarily find that there's a tremendous cohesive group of characters that you see every single game.
I would mostly agree. I disagree when you say I don't see a tank standing out. I think at our level, Reinhardt is everything.
Yeah,
like every single game is just, it's all about Reinhardt's just being shoved down your throat by the enemy comp. That's every single game. It's either like your Reinhardt is being supported and they're going in and they're getting shit done, or your Reinhardt is not doing that and theirs is, and the game is kind of dictated by Reinhardt, one way or another.
Yeah, and they didn't make any sort of big damage change or anything to him recently, so I can't even explain why. I agree with you that when I play against Reinhardt, it can feel very oppressive right now.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And I still don't feel like I necessarily see him every single game, but there was definitely a point where Reinhardt, when he was played, if you weren't good at him, you couldn't get away with it. And now it feels like if you are a piece of trash, like if you were a peanut with a brain inside of your shell, you can still, like, you can win games with Reinhardt currently for whatever reason.
How much of that, because they nerfed him in the most recent patch, a really light nerf. They reduced his armor from 250 to 200. How much of him being better is just people playing better around him? Because you and I have had games where we've both been, let's say, supports with an ally Reinhardt who charges in, is a total dumbass, is not thinking about how to play around his allies. And we're just like, well, either we can hang back and just let one of our teammates die, let this Reinhardt run in and die, or we can try to support them and give ourselves the best chance of winning. And sometimes that works. So how much of it is just people learning you got to play around the Reinhardt? Like, is what we're talking about more speaking to us evolving as players in Overwatch, where we're saying we have to play around this person who has no disregard for what the rest of the team is doing?
I mean, it has to be, right? Like, again, they literally took some of his health away, and he still feels overpowered. So it has to be, at least in part, that. And I know in general the player base for Overwatch has gotten a lot better than it used to be. Like, I watch Jane, who is he's a streamer. He used to coach for Dallas, I believe, the Dallas Fuel. He's kind of coached and VOD reviews for Overwatch for a long time, and when he's been doing interactive things with people on stream, he makes comments all the time about how the player base today, like what is a gold, what is a platinum, is so good compared to what they used to be. So I think there is some of that going on.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. Like League of Legends, which is my main game, has a very similar thing, which is like, if you look at some of the things that like pro players innovated in early seasons, bronze players do now in 2021, which is just wild to think about. And it's kind of self-selecting as well, where people who play the game and like, I don't want to play this, I'm casual and everybody's so good at this, they will just like dodge out of the game, like I don't want to play against these people. So the people who stay in are more hardcore over, like, on average than the rest of the player base. I mean, the game I played where this feels most evident is Rocket League, which I have not played in a minute. But every time I play that game, it's like, it feels like you're playing against robots. Even in my shitty ELO, you play against people and they are like doing aerials and insane stunts in the air. Like, so Overwatch definitely has that, I think, where people coming into it now are just going to be self-selectingly much better than you might anticipate, like when you first get into the game.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so just some brief other notes, because I know you said you didn't want to talk a lot about like the current patch, but a couple things I did want to touch on. Echo got a nerf where, so originally the way her ult works, she duplicates another champion, she becomes a copy of them, and she gets, 6 times their ult buildup? Is that right?
Yeah, it's something along those lines, 600%, 650%.
Right. And then, but when she duplicates them, she gets their full health bar. And then originally, when her ult wore off, she went back to her normal form, she got her full health bar after that. So she got a full heal twice. Actually, more than a full heal. Like, she duplicates tanks most frequently. Mm-hmm. So you duplicate a Reinhardt, you get your full health bar plus like another 100% health bar. Then you get reduced to 0. You get your own full health bar back. So they gave her a nerf where now she reverts back to the HP that she had when she duplicated, or 100 HP, whichever is higher.
Yep.
I think this is obviously good. I despise Echo. I I cannot, like, this champ annoys me so much on a bunch of different levels. But it's just so obvious that your ult that heals you should not heal you again when you mess up.
Yeah, I mean, they literally gave her 2 get out of jail free cards, basically. And that's how players use it a lot of the time, where it's like, all right, you're going in as Echo. Oh shit, I'm getting low. I have ult. I'm going to pop ult. Now I'm Winston. I got 600 health to play with. Oh, I built a primal in 2 seconds. I've got 1,000 health to play with. Oh, I died. Now I'm 200 health. I'm Echo, and I can just start all over, basically. And the only thing that's being removed from that is that last 200 health. Like, you can do all the same shit, and you can come out of there with 100 health or more still after all of that, which,
yeah,
even phrased that way, that's kind of insane.
That's the note that I took on this. It's like, good nerf. You need to go a lot further than this, I think. I think you come out with exactly the same amount of health that you had at the beginning. If you did it and you panic did it and you were at 5 health, you're 1 HP, you should come out at 1 HP. And you know what? That's still really good. Maybe your teammates can bail you out of there. Maybe you get a BAP immortality field. Maybe you get a heal thrown on top of you. Like, that's still so good. I don't know. I think she is ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how you would balance this, because you could set it up where, like, whoever she duplicates, if she loses her health as the duplicate, she dies and she's done. Which would totally dictate how you play in that ult, right? You wouldn't be as aggressive. Right. You wouldn't build that ult necessarily as quick. It wouldn't be nearly as effective. So how do you land in between those two things and make it fun for everybody? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't either. League of Legends recently released a champion, Viego, who has a similar thing. And the way he works, when he kills someone, or when someone dies near him, an enemy, you take over their body. And you get access to their basic abilities, but you don't get access to their ult. So you get to play as them, but you don't build up the ult. And that's cool. You know, it feels like it rewards you for knowing how other champions in the game work. I've got my problems with how Viego works, but that makes some sense to me. The problem I have is that, okay, she gets access to their ult, so you just get a Winston ult, but you also get a full health recharge, plus extra health oftentimes, and then you come back to your body and you get another heal. So just, like, that's not tunable, in my mind. There's no way to balance that. Yep. But this is a step in the right direction, I would say.
Yeah. Echo is played incredibly heavily in the May Melee tournament, and
yes,
there's a reason for that. You know, she's obviously, if you don't match the other team's Echo and they're playing one, you're gonna have a bad time.
Yep. Last note before we get into the Melee, D.Va.
I forgot about this, and I shouldn't have, because we were just talking about it last night, and we both died to it last night.
Yes, we did. So the tuning they made to D.Va is her call mech, so when she resuits, her mech lands on her, and it does 250 fucking damage in an AoE around where she remechs.
And that used to be 50?
50.
Yeah.
50 damage. So 250 damage, if you are a squishy champ, that is your entire health bar.
Yeah, I mean, if you are a damage champ or a support champ, you are
dead.
You're probably going to die.
Yeah. So why don't you lead us off here? Because you told me why they introduced this ability.
Yeah. The entire reason that this exists is because, particularly in high ELOs, when a team fight is won and a D.Va has been demech'd, she's run around as baby D.Va, a very valid strategy for that team is to stagger the baby D.Va. So they basically, surround her, run around with her. She has very low mobility. She's a character with a pistol running around. That's it.
She has no abilities.
Yep, just shoots her gun, and she can build up her ult, which is to put that mech back on. But teams would purposefully stagger her, so chase her around, let her do a little bit of damage while they basically just prolong that death, so that the rest of her team has to wait for her to respawn for the next team fight. So this is a way of trying to, I don't even want to say make it more fair for Baby D.Va, because I don't think that's really what it's about. It's trying to make it a little bit more of a challenge for them to stagger her in that sense.
It's trying to invalidate that strategy of staggering Baby D.Va.
Yeah. Trying to make it harder. Trying to make it to where, it's not so easy.
They made it basically so that if you're doing that, you can't be around her when she remechs. So either you're trying to stagger her and it's very risky, or you just give her a remech, which you don't want to do either.
Yep.
But what does that amount to at low elos is that she basically gets a second ultimate ability where she will just get random kills where you didn't even know where she was respawning from. And it's like another diva ult. It's like another diva bomb.
Yeah, I mean, we watched somebody in a quick play game yesterday who literally was running around as Baby Diva trying to find a target to call mech on, which obviously is like a strategic thing now, and that's kind of like you're saying, it's an extra ability of hers that sucks. Like you already killed Diva and demeched her. It's supposed to be challenging for her. She's already got a get out of jail free card, and now she can kill you, get in her mech, and then do more damage. It is kind of crazy.
Yeah, they've basically made it so that now what good Diva players will do in solo queue, they will run around corners now and try to trick you into running into their remech, which of course they'll do. Like, this is 250 damage. This is more damage than a lot of ults do. And this is just her getting more health and all her abilities back. I remember I told you when you were describing like why they made this change, I was like, this is the most inelegant way to solve this problem that they could have come up with, where we don't want people to stagger Baby Diva. Let's make it so her remech does 250 damage to everyone nearby. Like, it is so ugly. I mean, I don't see how this can stand. To me, this will not change anything in high elos.
No, I mean, I watched all of the Melee tournament, and
yeah,
I think I saw maybe one, maybe two incidental remix that had no impact on a team fight at the end of the day.
Right.
So it really, for them, it has no impact.
At the high elos, like, they'll try to go for the remech and they'll get headshot. So this is a really weird change for me. I don't really get this. Now it's just an extra thing I have to think about whenever I'm playing in my dumbass level.
Yeah, it was definitely, I mean, I feel like it's something that was targeted at higher ELOs and doesn't hit that mark at all.
Yep.
It was, if you watch in our level of play, people don't stagger the Baby Diva. People just kill. They just kill her. That's it. It's done. It's over. Or she gets to run around and do this thing. So yeah, it has some unintended consequences, and I don't think it's really a positive change for the game at all.
No, I don't think so. I think that should be an inherent disadvantage of Diva. Like, where she has this passive where you kill her and she can go back to full health and get her abilities back. The downside is you can be staggered. Like, that should be the trade-off. Yeah. There shouldn't be like, oh, you can get your full health back, and also you get another ult's worth of damage, and also people can't try to stagger you. I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm thinking to myself, how else do you solve this problem of stagger? I mean, you could simply give her just like a kill herself switch if you want to.
And execute, yeah.
Where that's her only other ability in that form. So you can just say, I'm dead, boom, you reset with your team, and you've taken care of it.
Right. And if you want to, you could put a delay on that.
Sure. It's got a cooldown from when you first hit Baby Diva.
Exactly. If you're like that's unfair that she can instantly reset with her team, you hit it and you get like a 5-second delay before she suicides, basically.
So you're
resets with her team.
You're setting a maximum stagger time, basically. You're saying
if that's the problem you're trying to address that problem. Don't introduce this whole other thing. Anyway, big rant. Not what we want to focus on. Let's talk about the Melee tournament. What did you think of it?
I loved it. I watched all of the qualifiers. I watched all of the tournament games. It was fantastic. I mean, the tournament games are most fresh in my mind because I watched them all in the past 2 or 3 days. And there were none in the tournament that were overwhelmingly one-sided. The winners bracket final and then the grand finals were the same 2 teams playing against each other in both of them. So Dallas Fuel versus Shanghai Dragons twice, which I thought was just super awesome that's how it ended up. Both of those matches were incredible. I think the first one went to 6 maps and the second one went to 5. I can't remember exactly, but they were very well matched, very fun to watch.
So why don't you tell me about the first matchup between Dallas and Shanghai? I did not watch that. I just watched the finals. So give me the highlights from what you remember from that.
So it was Dallas Fuel won the first map, and then they drew in the second map. So already you're starting with 1 win, 1 draw. You know it's going to go to at least 4 maps there, no matter what. The final map was Dorado, and it was kind of crazy to watch. Some of the character, or not the characters, some of the players for both of these teams. Watching Lip on Tracer was just absolutely insane in both of the matches. I think in the grand finals and some of the early rounds, he was just absolutely destroying shit.
I'm nodding vigorously.
Like the individual play, this is one of the things with the meta at the pro level that I think is really cool, is that there's not really a settled meta, and individual players made tremendous difference in all of these matches, which I thought was just really fun to watch some of these superstars put it out there and do their thing.
And it's awesome to see them go toe-to-toe on the same champ.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Like, there wasn't a set meta, but what ended up happening most of the time was that you would get mirror matchups where you would have Tracer v Tracer, you would have Echo v Echo, that sort of thing going on in the background, and watching those little 1v1s like that. That's really where some of the maps were won and lost, was if
Definitely.
I'm trying to think who played Tracer for Dallas, if it was Sparkle or
Sparkle.
Doha. Yeah, so Sparkle versus Fleta on Tracer. Yeah, like that was what really started some of the fights and started who actually won some of those fights, those little individual matchups, which I thought was really cool.
It was so dope. And what also was dope, because I just watched the finals, watching weird picks get pulled out. I am so gratified when teams can play weird picks and make them work, and that's what Dallas did. I'm thinking especially on map 3, which I think was Route 66.
No, I don't think they played.
No, it was Kings Row.
Kings Row, okay.
At the end of that map defending, Dallas pulled out Hanzo and 76 on Kings Row. And it was like just so baffling, not just to the casters, but obviously to Shanghai, where they had to adapt and they couldn't figure it out. It was like, these are not good quote unquote meta picks, but they were just making it work for them at the end of these maps. That was so gratifying to see these non-meta picks come out and do the job. And then also, Sparkle pulls out Reaper on the attack going the other way and just went ape shit on Reaper. He got a big flank behind them on Kings Row. I think killed both the support.
I think he dropped a Death Blossom, didn't he? And killed both supports.
With his ult.
Cruises right in,
Yep, and just kept with it. Just stuck on Reaper and was just mowing people down. It was so cool to see these champs that you're not accustomed to seeing. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and I think that's why one of the pieces of evidence, I guess I would say, that shows that Overwatch is in a good place is that these people are picking, like, I don't even want to call them comfort picks, but picks that they feel are good and that they're good with right now, and they're being effective. There's no one comp. It's not like GOATs where everyone had to play GOATs or you lose. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff and you can still win these matches.
Yeah. And it's not that there's not a best thing you can do, but there are other things that you can try that will do the job in different situations. And that was gratifying to me, that you could make different choices that would be appropriate for different things. And then again on map 4, this is on Gibraltar. So this one, Dallas had Sparkle and Doha, went Tracer Genji to get the first checkpoint. So they almost ran out of time and they switched to Tracer Genji, and they barely get the first checkpoint to just extend the clock and go forward. They push forward through the second point, and then they're running out of time. Like they're about to get into overtime, and then at the very last second, Sparkle on Tracer dashes forward, like just around the corner towards the spawn point of Shanghai, drops a pulse bomb into the spawn through a diva who does not land the defense matrix and kills 2 people in the spawn.
Yep, gets that double kill, yep.
Which basically secures it. And then they play the rest. Okay, so they win that point, and now they have to try to defend. Map 4 the other way goes so long. It goes all the way back the other way, back and forth. And then the overtime for Dallas defending there takes like a full minute and a half of them defending and like multiple echo, like on both sides, echoes getting multiple ults off on each other.
Getting Winston duplicates, getting Winston ults, all that shit, yeah.
And then what I loved is that Doha pulls out Doomfist at the very end to uppercut and punch and secure the win on the overtime there. It was such an exciting series. I would definitely recommend, if you did not watch the finals of Melee for 2021, check it out. It was really fun.
Yep. Yeah, so that went to 6 as well. So it was 6 maps for both of their winners bracket finals and the grand finals.
It felt very back and forth. It felt like it was a very good series.
On the final map of the winners bracket finals, which was Dorado, it looked to me like Dallas was losing that map almost the entire time. And they squeaked it out at each point. They literally overtime for first point. They had 2 minutes to get to second point. They were fighting against high ground the whole time. It just felt like they were losing the entire time. And somehow they made it to, like 75% of the third point and just held Shanghai before they even made it to the first checkpoint and won. Which I just... It never felt like one team was better than the other by much at all. It felt like a very even match, and it could have gone anyone's direction at any point in time, which was just... That made it that much more exciting for me.
I think that goes back to what we were saying earlier, which is the game is in a good place. I think when you get games like that, where, you and I always complain about this, where it's like, oh, we held the point until the last second and then they won it in overtime. It's like, that's good on the game designers, right? That it gives you those high tension moments. And that's what this tournament felt like, is the game is in a spot where it gives you those high tension moments.
Yeah, definitely.
It was really fun.
Yeah, and I think that's true for not just this match, but the other teams too. Watching Florida play against Chengdu, watching Florida play against Shanghai, like every single one of those was similar, where it never really felt like anyone was running away with it. I found it super fun that Chengdu was in the tournament to begin with, and that they were a competitor, because Chengdu's kind of been a meme, I feel like, in the Overwatch League community for a while. They always played weird stuff and didn't necessarily play what the meta was in years past. And again, I think that speaks to where the game is right now. Like they can play the things that they want to and be competitive. And seeing them, going toe to toe with Florida, going toe to toe with other teams was a lot of fun to watch.
It's good, and it's good that the game and the tournament setup is made so that the teams lower down in the brackets have a chance to compete and enter the tournament, compete in the tournament.
Do you feel like there was a meta of any sort that presented itself out of the teams?
I do. Winston was kind of omnipresent throughout the tournament, but I was thinking about that. Like, there's tons of Winston, but I also think that Winston is just a perennial feature of every pro meta that I've watched since I've started watching Overwatch League. And it's interesting because it's not like Winston shows up a lot at our levels.
No.
I mean, he's there, but he's not like this oppressive, omnipresent feature like other champions are. And that also put me in the mind of, it's funny, I don't know if you do this, when I'm watching pro play, I watch health bars a lot. And the support characters are so good at pro levels. I mean, of course they are. But someone takes damage, they're instantly getting healed, like just constantly. And I think that's what makes Winston good at high levels. He has his own bubble shield to block the initial damage, and then you can rely on your support characters to heal you up. And the disruption he allows, the sustain that he has with his ult, because you're just charging it up so quickly, that's what makes him good at high levels. So there was a lot of Winston, but I think there's just always a lot of Winston, honestly.
Yeah.
Tracer was probably the most prominent feature of the games that I watched as far as damage goes.
Almost every single game, yeah. There was. I feel like in general, dive tanks and dive damage was big, which feeds into the Winston, feeds into Tracer, Sombra, those champs who can just jump on somebody, try to do some quick damage, and get back out.
Yep. And then the other thing I noticed was Echo, which you mentioned previously. But I didn't know if that was just the games I watched, because Fleta is like known for many things, but known for like Sky dominance on Pharah, on Echo, and definitely had that going on. And so you have to match. And so, like you said, a lot of the game in the finals was about Echo v Echo, which was really exciting to see.
It was so funny. I took a note of this when I saw it. This was not the grand finals, but the winners bracket finals. There was a moment when Fleta and Doha, both playing Echo, beamed each other at the exact same moment, to where they literally both killed each other with their beams. So you see in the kill feed, it's just flipped. It's inverse.
Wow.
Yeah, it's inverse in the kill feed. Doha kills Fleta, Fleta kills Doha to the beam, and they're just both out of the fight. And that's the
screenshot of the series.
Yeah, exactly. That you could put this on the YouTube video for us talking about the meta, right? Like this is what's going on. These people are fighting each other to whoever dies first, and then the team fight ensues from there.
Yeah,
Echo was definitely prominent everywhere. And I think in general, like from a damage perspective, it was kind of all over the place depending on the map.
It was, yeah.
Depending on the map, depending on the teams. But I definitely took note of Echo, of Tracer, of Sombra. Sombra came out a decent amount in certain situations. And then early on, McCree was big. McCree was really big, especially with Florida. So Florida and Chengdu played McCree both. He's still really strong as that like short to mid-range hit scan. But it was fascinating to me, so many of these matches just didn't have hit scan for the most part. Which is a huge departure from last year Overwatch League, where Ashe was every single game, every single match, you're playing an Ashe who's damage boosted, and that's just part of what you got to do. There was definitely still Ashe, but it was not every match.
She did show up.
Yeah, it wasn't every match, and there was a lot of matches where hit scan wasn't a big part of how they put their damage out.
I liked it in the sense that you saw everything. Every single damage champ came out at one point or another, which, I mean, what more could you want as a designer, as a balance person from Blizzard, than every champion gets played and is good in different situations? Like, that's amazing, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. Yeah, again, just thinking about GOATs, where it was like every match is the same 6 to 8 champs basically for a while. Like, this is so much different and so much more interesting to watch.
Definitely. And I like, because it would not be cool if just every game is just like you're picking random stuff. Like, there are strategies, and it was cool to see especially in the finals that I watched, both teams would come out with a strategy, and then you had to come in, see what the enemy was doing, adjust accordingly, try to match them. Like, it felt like that's what Overwatch is. That's the cool part about Overwatch, is trying to balance your tactics and see what your enemy is doing and counteract it in some way. Like, that's the cool part, and it was really on display in this tournament.
Yep, definitely. Yeah, like Kenny said, go watch it. It's great. Even if you just watch the grand finals, it's awesome. The entire actual tournament will not take you that long if you skip ahead, and every bit of it was fun to watch for me.
All right, it's breakdown time.
Oh, let's break it down! are you so angry? My name is Kyobu Masataka Oniwa! As I breathe, you will not pass the castle gate!
Today, we are talking about Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice, which is the same amount of times I died playing it my first time.
I only died once, so.
Wow. Matt dies once. So, we are talking about Sekiro today. I want to talk about it from a gameplay perspective. In a future episode, we will talk about the lore, because I have very different thoughts about the lore than I do about the gameplay. And there's a lot to think about in this game. I think the first thing I want to talk about with Sekiro is your history and my history with From Software games in general. So to start with me, From Software games in general, I tend to watch games before I play games. And that goes for almost everything I play. I watch people on YouTube or on Twitch play them. I get interested, I research, and eventually if I'm interested enough, I will pick them up. And that was the case for Dark Souls. And really the first one I really dove into headlong was Bloodborne, which I played with a friend of mine, Troy, and got really into it, got into the lore. And you visited me at some point, and I was like, try this game out, which you tried a little bit of. But then what really tipped you over the edge, I think, you came over to visit me for a weekend, and we played Sekiro for basically a whole weekend. Is it fair to say that Sekiro is the game that got you into FromSoft games?
Yeah, absolutely. I played Bloodborne with you a little bit, and it was my very first From Software game, and it was difficult, as you know, as people know, and I struggled to really get into it that initial time that we played. And then I came over, you had downloaded Sekiro, and you were like, hey, we should try playing this game. It was
like that. It came out that weekend.
Yep, yeah. I mean, you literally had purchased it. It was downloading that day. You hadn't even opened it when I came over. And you were like, hey, do you want to try this game out? So I got to experience that from the very first opening cutscene with you, see how it starts. And so the very opening cutscene of Sekiro is amazing. It's beautiful, for one. Just the art is beautiful. It's like feudal Japan stuff going on, and you're just watching this kind of crazy war sequence that's explaining your backstory as Sekiro, as you're named eventually. And that I remember that being just really beautiful and kind of hooked me in even to just start playing the game right there.
Yeah, it's engrossing. It like pulls you in from the first thing. And I wanted to talk about, especially because, as I said, from the play of the game today, Amber just played through those opening stages as well. And I think the opening, I'm going to call it a level, even though there aren't levels in the game, but that opening sequence where you as Sekiro, you are a shinobi, and you have been separated from your master, a young boy named Kuro. And you're trying to get back to him. Very simple objective, and you are trying to get back to this tower that he is being imprisoned in. And the game, in this opening little sequence, teaches you everything you need to know about the game. If you just learn what it tells you in this opening, several minutes, you don't need anything else, basically. It teaches you about sneaking. It teaches you about death blows. So you sneak up on somebody, you get free stealth hits on them. It teaches you about parrying, which is important in the game, deflecting, holding a stance. It teaches you, if you just learn what that opening stage teaches you, and you get good at that, you will win the game just off of that. And I thought that was super cool. It's a very neat opening level, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And it's amazing, like you said, it teaches you every little bit that you need to know. And of course, you're not going to pick up on all of that immediately. No. You're not going to scoop all that up and just be able to run through the game. But going back to that, playing through that a second time, when you get done with the game and you do that, I think that really speaks volumes about what it does. Because literally you come out of your hole in the ground and it teaches you about scooting up on the wall and walking along an edge. It teaches you about crouching down and stealthy, and it teaches you about eavesdropping on people and listening to them for information. Like you said, it teaches you the sneak stealth blow. It teaches you the deflect. It's literally basically everything you really need to know in order to play the game.
And it teaches you about bosses, because you have a little mini boss at the end of that level, again, quote unquote, and you see that, they have like 2 points that you have to get through, and it's teaching you about posture, which is the biggest departure from other FromSoft games, where you have, normally in FromSoft games, they have a health pool, you see the enemy's health bar at the bottom, you hit them, you whittle it down, eventually you kill them. There is something very different in Sekiro, which is you can do that, but they also have posture, which is when you hit them, when you deflect them, when you jump on them. There's a bunch of different things where their posture bar grows over time. And if you break that posture, you instantly take off one of their death blows. They basically have like 1 or 2 hit points for most bosses. Yep. And it just depends how you want to approach them.
I love it because the posture mechanic is basically like, if you can style on these bosses, if you can style on your enemies, you're going to kill them faster. So when you start to learn the game and understand how those mechanics work, as far as the most basic is deflecting, obviously, right? But then you get into the Mikiri counter, you get into jumping off people's heads, you get into these little different things you can do in these fights where the combat looks super cool, and when it looks cool, you're doing more posture damage, and so there's this like kind of feedback loop where the more you style on your opponents, the faster you're actually going to be able to take them down, and I really, really enjoy that.
Is it safe to say that our favorite move in the game is the Mikiri counter?
I love it, and I think a huge part of that is the animation. Honestly, like you Mikiri counter all these different moves. Yeah, basically someone's trying to.
So what is the Mikiri counter?
It's a counter that you use against thrust attacks, which can be with a sword, with a lance. It can be with a foot. There's lots of different moves that come from your enemies, and these thrust attacks are often perilous attacks, which we should talk about in general, right? A perilous attack, there's this red symbol that comes across the screen, and what it means is this is unblockable. Like you can't do anything about this.
Normally you have an ability to just block any attack.
Yep.
Like you can hold up your sword, you can block almost anything.
Yep.
But you see this symbol pop up, you can't block this.
Right. Somebody's going to fuck your shit up if you see that symbol. Yeah. But if you recognize it as this thrust attack, what happens is you literally stomp on their blade, or you stomp on their spear, or you stomp on their foot. You basically just kick this attack down to the ground and embarrass the shit out of that person. And the best is when you Mikiri counter somebody to top over their posture and free them up for a death blow. Which for common enemies is like immediately when you Mikiri counter, but on a bigger boss you might have to do it at the end. Either way, when you do it for that final little bit of posture damage, you Mikiri counter and you stomp their shit into the ground, and now you go into this animation of death blowing, and you just like wrap around behind him and stab him through the throat or something. It's so cool.
You do some Scarlett Johansson Black Widow shit on him.
It's incredible. And I think the death blow animations in general are just so fun and so rewarding. It makes you want to keep getting those death blows.
Yeah. I remember way back in the day, Penny Arcade, Mike and Jerry, they were talking about QuickTime events. So this is when you're playing some game and it's like you're in kind of like you're doing an action scene, but you're still playing, and you just see a big, like, you're playing the PlayStation, so it's like hit triangle right now, and you hit the triangle. And for a long time, people were denigrating QuickTime events, and Mike and Jerry were saying, I defy you to watch God of War's QuickTime events and not be invigorated when you take the broken mast of a ship and thrust it through the Kraken's head, like stuff like that. That's kind of a similar thing to the death blows. Like, they make you press an extra button to do final death blows on bosses, but god damn it if it's not satisfying. Right. After this, you've died to this motherfucker 20 times in a row, and you get that last death blow, and you get to jump on top of them and slice their head off. Oh,
It's amazing.
it's so good. Yeah, so the Makiri counter is great. One thing I like to hear your perspective, because I think I know how you feel about this. Would you say that Sekiro is your favorite combat style among the Souls games that you've played so far?
I would say yes, it is, because I feel that the combat in Sekiro is very, it feels rewarding in a sense, whereas in a lot of the Dark Souls games, the combat is more learning to dodge and learning when you have openings, whereas
It's learning to not be punished.
Yes, yeah. Whereas in Sekiro, I think you can learn to punish. I think a big part of the combat system, like literally the way the combat system works, is essentially you need to learn to parry enemy attacks until they're done with a series. You counterattack until they're going to attack again, and then you go back to countering. They'll present you with the unblockable attacks, which you have to learn to dodge those at the right time. But it becomes this kind of dance where you're like, deflect, 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 attack, attack, deflect. Oh, they're about to sweep, I need to jump. Or, oh, they're about to thrust, I need to Makiri counter. Attack, attack. Like, it becomes a little bit more of a cadence, a little bit more of a rhythm that you have to go with. Whereas, the traditional Dark Souls boss is, I'm learning the cues for when they're going to do these certain attacks, and when they're going to do this attack, I need to dodge, or I need to do whatever. I need to run away, I need to dodge forward, I need to dodge left, whatever it is. Dodging in Sekiro, for the most part, doesn't really help you.
It's kind of a fool's game to dodge in Sekiro.
You can run away from a boss, and I kind of love this too about the game. You can literally sprint away from a boss who's trying to attack you, and they'll just keep chasing you until you stop, and they'll still attack you with that attack. They're not just going to give up. They're not going to attack nothing. They will force you to try to block or do something about it before you can move on. And I think I think it's just a rewarding system where you really do have to learn those patterns and learn how to dance with those bosses.
It's felt like a progression from the Dark Souls games, which were about being reactive, dodging, blocking, and then finding those windows to attack. And then you get to Bloodborne, which we'll talk about in future episodes a lot. Spoilers. Where in Bloodborne, it's rewarding you for being aggressive and pressing the attack. And then Sekiro, it's like that too, but now it's kind of doing both. You're trying to be on the attack and respond to what your opponent is doing. It's kind of comboing those things. I recently watched a video from VatiVidya, great Soulsborne YouTuber that we've watched a lot of videos from. And he said that the combat in Sekiro is a rhythm game. Like almost like a Guitar Hero or a DDR. And it's like, that's exactly right. Like you're trying to figure out what the attack pattern is of your opponent and match them, basically. Which is genius for a like sword fighting game. Like that's what it should be, is matching what your opponent is doing, and it's a dance. Like it's genius.
I love it. I think too, there's this one series of spoilers. There's this one series of attacks that Genichiro, the first time you really fight him at the top of the castle, where it's a flurry of attacks, and it's like ching, 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 ching. Like, it's this series of like 10, 12 sword hits that come at you. And when you've played that boss battle enough times, you recognize him going into this, winding up on it, and you're ready to hit that L1 button we play on console. That's your parry, right? And I can sit there and do that series of L1s without thinking about it and deflect every single one of those attacks. And it does become a rhythm game where you recognize, all right, he's going into this. Here we go. Ting, 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 ting. And now I can attack him. Like it's crazy, and it just feels good to learn and feels good to overcome what your enemy is bringing against you.
Yeah, and when you do it, you feel like a badass. You have matched your opponent. Like, it's not just like I've done I've executed the series of commands that say I've beaten it, like you've matched your opponent's attacks. Like you feel like you are the master swordsman. That's what the game is teaching you to do. And it fulfills the fantasy. Like it sets out the fantasy that they want you to experience, and you get to experience that fantasy. It is a great combat system.
One of the things that I really also like about the game, the way you progress as a character, as far as advancing your own toughness, your own attack power, that kind of stuff, is entirely dependent on beating mini bosses and bosses in the game. So the way it's structured basically is you have to kill mini bosses to get prayer beads, and when you get 4 prayer beads, you can get a bigger health bar. When you beat a boss, you can up your attack power. And I think it's just really natural to progress through the game because of that. Because you literally have to go through these fights to then make yourself stronger. Every time you beat a boss, and there's required bosses and there are some that aren't, but every time you do, you up your attack power and make yourself, better, make yourself a better matchup for the next boss. So it very naturally kind of flows forward to, it never feels like you're underpowered really, or at a point where you can't, like you have to go grind a bunch of common enemies in order to compete with the bosses and continue to proceed in the game.
Absolutely. I would say this is something that some players will probably dislike about the game. There's not really like different builds that you can
literally
have.
None,
like,
yeah.
Your main weapon is your main weapon. There is no other main weapon that you can get. You have the Shinobi prosthetic, which is like a secondary tool. It's not a weapon, but it has different utility. You've got your grappling hook, which is the main one. You've got firecrackers that you can lay out in front of you. You've got a shuriken. These are all kind of like light things that can help you in various different ways. You don't need any of them, except the grappling hook.
Which you get from the beginning. As soon as you get your prosthetic, you're good.
Yep. You could just play the entire game with your normal-ass sword and your grappling hook, and that is the entire thing. And for me personally, that is the ultimate vision of these Souls games, because as we said earlier in the episode, it's about getting good. This game is satisfying because you as a player are getting better at playing the game, not because you're getting some arbitrary number that's going up as you play more and eventually you just win. When you win, it's because you are doing better. And one thing I love about this game is that initial zone that you encounter at the beginning, you come back to it later in the game several times and face these enemies and face the same zone that you faced before. And it's so gratifying to face them again and beat their ass because you know how to play the game better. It reminds me of in Pokemon when you come back to Pallet Town and you've leveled up your Pokemon. But the difference here, you haven't leveled up your Pokemon. You yourself have leveled up. You are better at the game. And now you're beating these enemies who gave you so much shit at the beginning. And it's so gratifying to see that progress. Which I think is ultimately what makes these games good. And what makes Sekiro stand out is that it is emphasizing even more than any of these other games your progress as a player.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm thinking now about Bloodborne, and like when you play Bloodborne, you build up your stats and stuff. You build yourself up throughout the entire game. If you go back to Central Yharnam later in the game, you just beat the fuck out of people. And Sekiro,
you have farm routes.
Exactly. And Sekiro is not like that at all. Where you don't really like, you can go revisit the Ashen Outskirts if you want to. And you can kind of whip up on people, but you still have to deflect them, and they can still do a lot of damage to you if you let them hit you. It's not. There's not a single point in the game where you really feel like you are overpowered or underpowered. It feels like you're in a good spot.
Or rather, if you feel like you're powerful, it's because you are more skilled as a player than you were before.
Yeah, definitely.
Sekiro, from a gameplay perspective, is really fun and really satisfying. We will definitely revisit at a later date the story of the game, which we also have a lot to say about, both positive and negative, I think.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good point to wrap it up today.
Yeah. Sounds great. It makes me want to go play some Sekiro.
Yeah, I know. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. We have been the Intangibles. You can find us at geekspective.com. I'm Kenny. That's Matt.
My name is Gobu Masataki Oniwa!
We'll see you next time. Bye.